Welcome to another Canvas tips and tricks session. Today we're going to go over the basics of creating a Canvas quiz and some of the basic options that you have to work with. So let's jump in. So here we are in a sample Canvas course. We are in the course modules because that's the way that I like to organize my courses. So I'm going to add a quiz to week 1. So I do that by hitting the plus icon, and then in the drop-down menu, I'll click Quiz, and you'll see all of the quizzes listed here that are already in your course. So you might not have anything here if this is your first time making a quiz. So you'll click on New Quiz, and you will give it a name. Let's call it Week 1 Quiz. And now I'm going to click Add Item. This creates a blank week 1 quiz in my course. You'll see it's not published. So we'll have to click on the title to enter the quiz and start adding questions. And now I'll click Edit, and I can start making changes. You'll see the quiz details tab. This is where we start, and this is where we will do things like enter the quiz instructions, choose what type of quiz it's going to be, if it's going to be a survey, quiz, or just kind of a practice activity. We'll be able to set things like a time limit and number of attempts and give it a due date and so on. So we'll go over that in a minute. But right now I also want to bring your attention to this other tab that we have up here called the Questions tab. And this is where we'll actually start entering in our questions, or we'll link it to a question bank. So there's another video on using question banks. So for this particular video, we're just going to do new questions one by one. So let's go back to the Details tab. And the quiz type options, we can make it a practice quiz for no points. We can make it a graded quiz, which is usually what you'll use. That's a standard graded quiz. We could also make it a graded survey where students will get points just for filling out the survey. They don't get answers wrong or right because it's a survey, or we can make it an ungraded survey. So let's stick with graded quiz. And now we have several options that we can choose from. The first is to shuffle answers, and I recommend that you check mark this every single time. And the reason I suggest this is because that means students aren't going to be looking at the same answers in the same order. You'll also notice when you actually get into the quiz question creation process that by default, the first multiple choice answer is correct. So if you forget this and you're just putting in your possible answers and you don't remember to shuffle the answers, then you'll find that students will figure out very quickly that the first answer is always the right one. So we'll talk about that more in a minute when we actually get into that process of creating our quiz questions. But for right now, I recommend always check marking the shuffle answers. The only way that you would have to be careful with this is if you have a very specific answer order. So let's say you have questions that are multiple choice. If you have answers that go A, B, C, D, and D means all of the above, then if you shuffle those answers, it's not going to be in the right order. Here's what I mean. If we have a question that looks like this, we really need all of the above to be at the very bottom. So if you shuffled the answer order, then you might have a problem. So we'll go into that more in a minute, but let's go back to our quiz options. So right under Shuffle Answers, we have the time limit option. This is where you can give your students a certain amount of time to complete their quiz. So we would want to give this, I don't know, let's say 60 minutes. Try to mirror this to what your typical class session is. So if you typically in a face-to-face class give, a minute per question, it's a 50 or 60 question quiz, then you would want to mirror that very closely here. Just maybe give them an extra minute or two if you know that all of your students are pretty new to online. There is a space to give students more time per student. We'll go over that at the very end. That's under moderate this quiz, which is an option that will not show up until you publish your quiz. So we'll take a look at that in just a minute. So give them the basic time limit for everybody here, and then you can choose whether or not you want them to be able to do multiple attempts. So do you want them to be able to take this quiz 2 or 3 times or more? This is especially valuable if it's a low stakes quiz. This becomes more of a learning opportunity for your students. So if we want to give them allow multiple attempts, if we don't check mark this, they have unlimited attempts. If we check mark this and we only give them maybe 1 extra attempt or 2, whatever we want to do, then we can choose what quiz score they get to keep. So maybe we want to let them keep the highest quiz score. That's a really low stakes practice exercise where they can do it over and over and then their highest is kept. We might just want to make them keep the latest quiz score. So if they take it 3 times, the last attempt is going to be the quiz that sticks if we choose latest. We can also average this. So if we allow them 2 attempts and then they take it twice, this would be the average of their 2 attempts. So if they bomb it the first time and they ace it the second time, they're not going to have that last attempt stick or the highest attempt stick. It's going to be an average of the 2 attempts. So let's scroll down a little bit. Now we can choose when to allow students to see their quiz responses and when or if they can see the correct answers. So by default, these 2 items are checked where once they submit their quiz, they will immediately see their quiz responses and they'll see any questions they got wrong. So it will just say incorrect next to it. We can make it so that way they can only see it after their last attempt or maybe only once after each attempt. So that way they can't go in at any time. They see it the one time and that's it. So they can't use it for, say, review, or they couldn't go back in and see it, or show a friend or something like that. So these options are up to you. And then you can choose to let the student see the correct answers or not. Again, by default, these 2 items, the students, by default, they will be able to see their quiz responses and they will be able to see what the correct answers are. So not only will it say incorrect, but then it'll have a little green pointer that says this is the correct answer. So if you want to minimize cheating, you might want to remove this option, or you might want to only show those correct answers after the quiz due date, for instance. So you have a lot of options here. The next option is to only show 1 question at a time. So if you have quiz questions that you know are going to answer a previous question later in the quiz, then you might want to only show 1 question at a time and then lock those questions after answering. That means students will not be able to go back and update their answer once they hit next. They lock those question answers, and it will also warn them when they try to take the exam that they will not be able to go back, that those questions will be locked the minute that they hit next. So we'll unmark this for right now, but that's a great option to have. You can also require them to have an access code right here, and this is where you would enter in your own custom password for this. Keep in mind, this is valuable if you're proctoring in a face-to-face environment, or even if you're having everyone take it at the same time in Zoom. This is less likely to have students who are taking it for another student because they have to be there and get that access code. The next option is the filter IP addresses. We won't worry about that because we don't know our student IP addresses necessarily. Now we also have this assign to function. You can assign it to everyone by default. You can make it due on a specific date, and then you can make it available from a specific date and until a specific date. I want to point out one thing here that's really important. This is not the space to make an accommodation for a student. This is different than the timing function up here, this time limit. So if you want students to have a time limit, give them a 60-minute time limit and then let them take it from 10 a.m. until 11 a.m. if you want. But if they start taking it at 10:30 a.m. and they have a 60-minute window, then they will be able to take it all the way until 11:30. So this just means the time they can start the exam, if that makes sense. So make sure that you put in a due date here and an accurate available from and until date. You could give, if you wanted to make an accommodation for somebody, again, you don't do it here. A lot of people think this is the way to do it. They'll give student a little bit longer to turn it in. That's not going to extend the amount of time they have on their quiz. So really important to note. This would really be for maybe if a student is going to submit this late, the next day or something, this is what this is for. So once you set your quiz options here, then you can set your instructions, tell them what to expect, right? So if they each get 2 attempts, you might want to put some text here to that effect. They'll be able to see the options either way. But here's what that quiz will look like. And we haven't entered any questions, but I'm going to take that away. I'm going to go ahead and save it so you see a preview of what this is going to look like. These are the detailed quiz instructions, and students will see this. So this will tell them something about it, but it's always helpful to write in plain language some quiz instructions so that this makes a little more sense to them. So let's go back in and edit. And now we're in the questions tab. This is where we can create a new question, or we can link to a quiz question bank. There's another video about that, so we won't be talking about that today. Or you can find individual questions that you've used in your other courses or your other quizzes within this same course. So right now, we're just going to click on plus new question. And we have this drop down, which gives us all these different question type options. You will find for specific types that there are specific instructions right here. So it tells you how to work with whatever this specific quiz question format is. For right now, we're just going to cover the multiple choice. It's the easiest one. It's the one that's the most used. This is auto graded, and we put in our points per question up here in the top right. So each question has a certain amount of points added to it. This differs from something like an assignment, which has an overall, maybe it's an essay that's worth 100 points. This is a quiz question worth 1 point, and you'll have to enter in 99 more to make it a 100-point quiz. So we enter in our question text here. I'm just going to do a basic one. What color is the sky? And now if I scroll down, I'll have my answer space. If you don't see any answers here, any possible or correct answers, you could click this little icon that says add another answer. And you can also remove answers if you would like. And I did that by clicking on the little trash can icon that shows up when you hover your mouse over the answer itself. So we're going to leave this as 3 answers. The top one is correct. If you didn't remember to shuffle your answers, make sure that the first answer is not always correct. So you might want to go down here and make this the correct answer. You do this by hovering over the correct answer and clicking the little green arrow that shows up to the left of the answer. So right now we'll make this one the correct answer, and we'll put blue, yellow, and red. And it does remember all of the answers you've ever put in here, as you can see, as long as you're on the same computer. So I can now update my question. This is really, really important to do. You'll notice you have save at the bottom right. Most people will click save, and if you do that, strangely, your quiz question does not save. So if I go here, we'll just put this information back in. So I just put all this information back in right now. If I hit update question, I'm good to go. And now I can save my quiz and the question will have saved. So it's really, really important when editing your quiz to make sure that you update each question as you go along. If you don't do that, your quiz questions don't necessarily save. It's very, very frustrating. So I also recommend that you guys create your questions in something like Google Docs or a Microsoft Word document that you can save as you go, and then you can copy and paste your quiz questions and answers in here. And then if something goes wonky during this process, it's not a super time consuming process to repaste those questions and answers in. It's not awful. So right here, we're going to put in our question. We'll try another question. Let's say, what color is the ocean? You get 0 points for my creativity. And then we'll put in our typical answer. And I'm going to set this as the correct answer. You'll notice there's no A, B, C, D. You have to manually put those in if that's the way you would like this to look. I recommend against this for accessibility reasons, but here's how it looks. When you do this, you have the option to put in some feedback for each one of your questions. You can have feedback on each answer, right? So right here we could put feedback. Here's some sample feedback for this particular answer. I'll hit done. And now I have some feedback for this answer. I could also enter in feedback for the correct answer, or I could enter in some general feedback, right? So either general feedback right here for each question. So no matter what they answer, they're going to get these comments when they view their exam after they submit it. Or you can enter in some general wrong answer feedback, which would apply to this and this one. Or you could enter in only the correct answer feedback. So either way is just fine. No matter how you do it, it works. So we'll remember to update our question. There is also the long answer option. Let's take a look at that. So instead of a multiple choice or true false, any of that, it's going to be this essay question, or we could do a file upload question. So an essay question will allow them to enter in their answer in a blank field. So it would look something like this, and they would type in their essay. And yes, you can have both types. So these ones are auto-graded because you told Canvas what the correct answers were. So Canvas can say, yes, it acts like a Scantron, right? It can tell you, yes, that is a correct answer. And down here, because this is an essay question, there's no possible way to automate this. Canvas will not grade this for you. You will have to grade it. But it will at least grade these pieces, and then it will wait for you to grade this one. And you could also do a file upload question here. This is nice because now you have a timed exam. So even though they're doing the exam not necessarily from right within Canvas, they're doing it in maybe a Word document or Google Docs or something. This gives you a way to time them, which is really nice. So if you've got an hour-long essay, they write it in Word, they are timed. So that's really the benefit of this. So put in your essay prompt here, and then you can give some general feedback. So we'll just put essay prompt. We're going to update the question, and this is what this looks like. You can also view the question details if you want to see at a glance what the quiz looks like. So make sure when you're ready that you save it or save and publish it. I'm just going to save it for right now, but you will need to publish your quiz in order for your students to take the quiz or for you to make any accommodations to them. So accommodations, as I mentioned earlier, is under this moderate this quiz function, which is right here. This is also the space right here, the speed grader. This is where you'll grade those essay questions or just view your students' submissions. So I'm going to moderate this quiz, and I'll see a roster right here. You can see there's just test students in this class. And I would hit the pencil icon to modify my students' permissions in this quiz. So this is where I would make accommodations. So it says right here, everyone already gets 2 attempts. So how many additional attempts should this student get, right? So I'm going to say 1 additional attempt. Or you might want to give extra time on an attempt. So if everybody already gets 60 minutes, you would want to, if you want to double the quiz time, you would write 60. I know that's counterintuitive. The first time I did this, I put in 120 because I figured that's double 60. But remember, this is additional minutes, so it's 60 minutes is what they get plus another 60, and now we have a doubled quiz. So you may need to manually unlock the quiz for the next attempt. I would not do this. I would just leave this the way it is and hit save. And now we have student A who gets an additional attempt. So they have 3 attempts, everyone else has 2, and they get 60 extra minutes on their attempts. So really important stuff. So for now, let's take a preview of that quiz and see what it looks like. To do so, I'm going to go back into my modules, and I'm going to see my week 1 quiz. It's only 3 points because I only put 3 questions in it. And I'm going to click on preview. And now I can see what this looks like. You can see I've got my time running right here. Students will see their time running and they'll also see how many questions are in the quiz. I did not make it so that it was only displaying 1 question at a time, just to keep it simple so students will be able to scroll down and answer their question this way. If they have an upload question, they would see the prompt here and then they would hit choose file and find it on their computer to upload it. And this one, it looks like I missed something right here. There was a little extra question space that I didn't remember to delete. So this is what that looks like when that happens. Not a huge deal, but definitely worth, cleaning up. So I'm going to submit the quiz. Sure. And I'm going to go back in and hit edit. Let's go back in and view my questions. And I can edit my question by hitting the little pencil icon. And I'll make sure to remove this additional blank answer and update my question, hit save. And now when I preview it, it should look a bit cleaner. Right here, we don't have anything. And again, this is those shuffled options. So you see that this does not look the way you want it to. So I would not use, A, B, C, and so on. I would just keep it clean, let it be shuffled, and try not to use stuff like all of the above. If you want to use something like that, you would say all of the answers are correct. That would be what your option would be. So that's it. Let me know if you have any questions. I know this was a bit long for a tip and trick video, but I hope that this is helpful. Thanks so much for watching.